Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to week 2 of the Vainglory Premier League Summer Open. We're here in the wonderful city of Las Vegas, Nevada, at the Aria Resort and Casinos Poker Go studio. We're ready to get on into our second day of games here in our second week. We're in the round of 16 and we're ready to see more of those big ticket matches. My name is Munchables. I'm going to be joined once again by Tasty Bacon as we head into day number 2.
Yeah, absolutely looking forward to the games we have today. Some of the teams I've been really waiting to see, especially one of these play-in teams that was a little dominant in their matchup, finally going to get to go against one of the bigger teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot wait to see the matches today. Let's take a look at those matches that are going to be coming your way. Brought to you by Razorphone, of course. We're going to be starting things off in Europe. We already have a default victory in Europe. Rising Lotus are going to be able to take their game as Little Godfather, unable to show for their matchup here today, and it's single elimination, so they are out of the tournament. Divine Vendetta versus Historic Esports will be our first game here in Europe. Then later on, at 12 o'clock, we'll jump into our North American games with Hammers Esports up against Lemon Squeezy, and then Team Ferox going up against the Minigunners. Now, off the back of their victory, we had a little chat with PT Lam from Rising Lotus in our Razorphone In.
Hey guys, it's PT Lam. I am from Rising Lotus, and we are one of the best teams in EU. And we have a big chance to be in top 3 teams. So please support us and give us your energy, and we will be the best.
And as you can see, Rising Lotus with that win is going to be moving on to the quarterfinals, joining Clash and Raw Fury as the other teams already qualified for the top 8. But now that they're in the top 8 out of the round of 16, this is where you start to get a little worried if you're a Rising Lotus fan, because they have a history of being middle of the pack. I mean, you look at their preseason performance, they finished with a 5-5 record, had 47% of the dragons in their games that they captured, and as a team, they had a 56% kill participation. Just about everything with this team was split right down the middle.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that when they were against the weaker teams, they looked dominant. They looked fantastic during the preseason. But once you got them against those bigger names, once you got them against the likes of Clash or Queso, they just fell apart. There wasn't that cohesion in the same way, and it felt like they were struggling to level up their gameplay. But there have been a few roster changes coming into the main season, so maybe things have changed.
Yeah, not too many members from the preseason Rising Lotus are still in Rising Lotus. A lot of them have branched down. Rising Lotus kind of rebuilt themselves and are hoping that they're going to be able to have a better than middle of the road finish this time around. And well, time will tell. They've already gotten to the halfway point. Let's see if they can continue it on in the coming weeks.
Yeah, we'll have to see how they're going to do in their quarterfinal matchup. But we have to find out who their opponent will be first. Divine Vendetta versus Historic Esports is going to be your play big head-to-head. And we can take a look at how Historic have been doing so far, because they were in our play-in round. We can take a look at our Rockstar Reward.
Yeah, they were absolutely dominant in their play-in round, especially with the help of Siyun, playing those CP mages, the Samuel and the Reza. He was kind of the standout star, but it was a team effort. They constantly were rotating as a full squad, diving underneath enemy turrets, looking for kills. As you're gonna see right here, they go deep underneath these middle turrets and are still just finding kills and escaping without giving their opponents any sort of breathing room.
Yeah, and it's the confidence and teamwork that you see from these guys, and that's why they're going to be one of my new kids on the block for this tournament in general. We've not really seen them around before. Now they're coming in and showing strong stuff for the first game. I'm excited to see them against Divine Vendetta. But we've also got Fern Skullblacker here, another one of my teams to watch, because their matchup last weekend was an incredibly intense one. They managed to eke it out in the end, and I'm curious what that means for them moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Then the final team that was on that new kids on the block was Team GG, and for them, it's almost a little bit of a different story. For Team GG, we want to see them step up from what we saw in the play-ins. Yes, they made it through the play-in round, but if they're going to continue any further in this tournament, they need to improve their decision-making drastically coming into the round of 16.
Yeah, honestly, I think with all of the play-ins teams that we saw last weekend, the big question is how much of a measuring stick was that versus our top 16 teams? Like, how big of a difference are these games going to be? And Historic is one of the biggest question marks for that, just because, you know, they absolutely dominated in their game. But was that a matter of how good they are, or that they had a weaker opponent? We're going to find that out today as they go up against Divine Vendetta. And honestly, it's a difficult question to answer just going off of watching 2 games alone, but I'm excited to be able to break that down a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the matchups that I was absolutely looking forward to, but one of the things that we have to talk about with Divine Vendetta and Historic is the picks. I mean, we mentioned Samuel and Reza. Reza's one of our top bans thus far in this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw Siyun doing serious work with Reza. Honestly, every time any of those 4 gets through, they dominate the game. Aside from Anchor, we've still yet seen much out of Anchor, and she slipped through a few drafts yesterday without being picked or banned at all. But then, obviously, the first picks as well. Fortress, despite being nerfed slightly, still an incredibly solid first pick.
Yeah, and the Fortress and Arden being first picks it kind of leads to these teams going for safer drafts in a sense, and they're not really being super aggressive. They're not grabbing their carry right off the bat because they don't want it to get countered really early in the draft. So they like to kind of see, okay, are they going to be building something that is going to be able to deal with, a Celeste? And if not, then we pick up the second rotation.
And I want to mention as well, we saw Malene and Adagio as well as top picks. Statistically, they were in the 4 top picks. But there were basically just Fortress and Arden. Aside from those bans, just Fortress and Arden. So there was like 1 or 2 Adagio picks that statistically pushed them up the board, but realistically, we're just seeing Fortress, Arden, and then obviously the 4 permabans. Here we go. We are into the draft though. Reza going to be banned away to start this one off. Fortress taken off the board, and Anchor. So pretty standard stuff so far. We've got Divine Vendetta on our A side.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if we do eventually start to see the draft kind of change and shift a little bit more towards banning away all of these mages that players like to play. But for now, it is still going to be a little bit of a variety in terms of what actually gets banned and what gets allowed through for those second and third picks.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to see Kinetic band away there. So pretty much standard. Kensei is open for a first pick. So is Arden. I think Kensei has to be. After the performances we saw yesterday on Kensei, I don't see how.
Kensei's definitely climbing up into that top first pick.
He got
a buff, and we saw him a times like yesterday as well. I know Tribe first picking him and just doing absolute work with Kensei. So I fully expect to see him start to becoming either more of a top priority pick or start to get into those bands as well. I would expect to see it in the bands because he can take game if he gets rolling.
He definitely can. That's one of the nice things about being on that A side is you can choose not to ban away one of those top picks. Guaranteed that you get something like Fortress kind of opens that slot of just a little bit. We see Malene Sky are going to be the answers from Historic, which pretty decent pickups against the very safe character.
Yeah, but that is going to be the Samuel then taken away by the side of Vendetta. So they've got the Reza and Samuel. So now Siyun's going to have to bring out something new. Obviously, again, I don't doubt that he has more in the pool, but we've only seen those 2 games from him. He was dominant. Will he be able to continue that trend?
That's going to be the question. I would like to see him on something very aggressive here. He had been playing up in the top, so there's kind of multiple directions he can go that. Churnwalk going to be locked in. Something we've seen kind of on the fringe of the meta. Some teams like to pick him up, but definitely not something that everybody likes.
He's often picked up when the team looking to pair him with something like the Baron or the Celeste that has that big AoE damage that can be provided as well. We've also seen him Fortress a lot. Obviously, not all those are going to be able to grab here. So we'll see what's going to be. We have to wait just a little bit before we find out.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to refresh that one a little bit. Same picks and bans will be locked in. They can't change any of the stuff that has been locked in at this stage. But I'm excited to see how Divine Vendetta will round this one out as well. I'd like to see something very tanky now. They have a lot of damage. They've got the Kensei, they've got the Samuel. Maybe a third damage dealer would be nice to round things out a little bit, but then something like a Finn would be fantastic just to group people up, protect the Samuel a little bit, and just allow him to carry.
The thing about the Finn, though, is you already have the Flicker. So you're dedicating yourself to 2 captains. And so I'm not sure if the Finn
Flicker top lane.
Flicker top lane, maybe. I would like to see something more like along the lines of like Glaive or Rona, Tony. I'm really surprised that we haven't seen too much of the Rona because she got a few buffs in this update. And I feel like she wasn't that far out of the meta beforehand. And so I think with these buffs, a couple of players that were fringe Rona players I think would really be able to bring her back into the meta in a big way.
It's going to be Glaive locked in here, but I mean, I could talk about Rona a long time. I kind of want to. I don't think she's going to be picked here, so I'll leave the topic for another time. But Glaive going to be locked on in. Adagio to round that out. Pretty decent composition. You've got Adagio to make people a little bit tankier.
And actually,
so
one thing that gets overlooked a lot there is the Adagio flicker is
Yeah.
actually really strong, because you can almost guarantee that you get that gift of fire onto as many enemies as possible without them even knowing that it's going to happen. So it's a really neat little combo you can set up there. But now for the side of Historic, what do they want to round out their composition? They're going to grab the Ardent. I'm very surprised Ardent actually went this far into the draft before getting picked.
Yeah, I mean, very, very late pickup of the Arden, but they're going to be able to lock him in the end. I guess when Flicker was picked so early on the other side, you're a little bit safer to go for that very late on into the draft. But let's take a look at our rosters. Jumping on into this game, start off by talking about Divine Vendetta. You'll know some of these names. It's X-Dragon, Aristocratic, Foskis, the Joker, and Ghost 83.
Yeah. And over on the other side of the Rise is going to be Historic Esports. If you watch the play-ins, you already know them. It is Ostromaseru, Le Pacifisto, Mr. Raufai, Siyun, and Electro. And once again, Siyun is the guy you really want to be keeping your eyes on in this game.
Ostromaseru, definitely a bit of a mouthful. Let's say that sometimes fast, but definitely a team that I'm excited to see how they're going to match up against some of these more old school names in Vainglory. Divine Vendetta, they've been around the block, and Historic now have their opportunity to really prove themselves here in the VPL.
Yeah, and you mentioned been around. You got Divine Vendetta, has been a very strong team.
They certainly have. We're going to jump on into our first game of the day. It's time to pass it over to FlashX and Humanist.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the game. My name's Humanist. I'm joined by the one and only FlashX, and we have an incredible series to kick the day off here. Divine Vendetta going up against Historic Esports. Flash, how you doing, man?
I am doing pretty well. Excited to be here. Divine Vendetta, some familiar faces on that side. Historic Esports, some newcomers. I like what they've done with their draft here, though.
You're liking this draft? Because I mean, it's not that I don't like it. I was just looking at Divine Vendetta and I was like, man, that is solid.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Divine Vendetta's draft is very strong. They're looking to get aggressive early.
Yeah, they definitely get in there, get aggressive, but forced out. Historic Esports, I like that they group up, and this is a really tight movement. I mean, they're almost stacked on top of each other. They'll contest over here for the. This is not even a contest. They'll just take that healing tree into waste. Suddenly, Historic Esports flexing.
Historic Esports understands how tanky their composition is, and that's going to be really hard for Divine Vendetta to try and deal with here so early on. Divine Vendetta is going to have to play on the back foot just a little bit while they allow their composition to scale.
Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, honestly, that is really a thick front line to get through. You get easily Tony naturally durable, backed up by the Arden. That's pretty yummy. And of course, Churnwalker as well. Joker taking quite a bit of damage, just has to be careful, doesn't really want to engage. Ghost 83, he's chained up, that's first blood. Historic Esports will get the first blood plus the weapon treant as well. My goodness.
That is exactly how Historic Esports wants to start off this game. Their tanky composition allows them to put on so much early game pressure. However, looking at Divine Vendetta, you're going to have to keep in mind Kensei's heroic perk and all the extra damage he gets going into these tanky targets, especially when they start building all that extra bonus health.
Yeah, it's true. He's going to get in there, and these guys will have a tendency to kind of stack up on each other. So it does feel like that'll definitely be a weakness. Potentially. We'll see how it plays out. Electro taking quite a bit of harass from Aristocratic here in mid. Unfortunately, Aristocratic will get under that turret and take a little return damage, but this is going to be a tough lane, it feels like, for the Maline. Honestly, the Samuel Adagio pretty strong.
Absolutely. She's got that B ability to try and dodge out some of the extra damage. Very interesting to see Divine Vendetta pick up the Glaive. Joker going to be the one playing it. Not a hero that I don't think we saw at all yesterday. Glaive could potentially struggle trying to pick off some of these backline carries. Maline can go invulnerable. Sky can just Surrey strike back into safety. It's going to be really interesting to see how effective he can make those afterburns work.
Yeah, The attempt on Sky will be, I think, the most important. That's a really good target for him. But like you said, if Sky's able to hold that Surrey strike, man, it's incredibly tough. It's like you almost have to bait that Surrey strike out a lot of times.
Absolutely. And Seiyun, he's going to be on that Arden. He could just Vanguard to the Sky, making sure she's not getting bursted too hard, allowing her to reposition. And then she's so mobile, that could be really hard for Foskis on that Samuel to land a lot of his Malice and Verdicts.
Right now, more of an aggressive move here from Historic Esports as they line up down by this weapon Trant. It started up by Divine Vendetta this time, and Seiyun taking a lot of damage. There's the Afterburn, but did they have the damage flash? No! He'll dip out of this. Oscar Masaru able to get back as well, but Le Pacifisto, he's able to get back as well. These guys juggling the damage quite nicely here early on, and that weapon buff goes over to the Joker, so good job by Divine Vendetta.
Yeah, really nice chains by Ashro Masaru to keep his team in that engagement. However, Historic Esports going low, they need to be really careful here.
There's that Afterburn you're looking for. The Joker will set his team up. Although they trade back 1-for-1, Sky will pick up that kill, and pretty important to get a little bit of gold in her pocket.
Really interesting to also see Ashro Masaru on that Churnwalker. It looks like he's going for that Crucible as his first item. I think more traditionally on Churnwalker, we see a Fountain come out first, but he's going to want to make sure that he has the block for when Adagio gets the Verse of Judgment online.
That's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. I like this as an item choice. And like you said, they're so tanky. If you can just make sure that no one's going to get connected with the big ability like that, it's going to make their life a lot easier.
Absolutely. A little bit back and forth. Definitely a very aggressive early game. Not too many kills. Lots of juggling of the damage. Definitely what we expected out of Europe. North America on the flip side of the table, much more passive yesterday. I personally much more enjoyed this early game aggression that Europe likes to do so well.
It's fun from the casting viewer perspective, and I'm sure it depends on the playstyle too. So but you know, some guys, they like to just sit back and farm Flash. You know this, right? Like you try to get them involved and they're like, dude, I just gotta farm up an item.
Absolutely. They want to scale. They want to just, you know, be more efficient than the other team, let the time go on. Tribe doing it yesterday also so well, just very, very calculated, allowing them to kind of capitalize on that efficiency and slowly whittle away at the enemy team.
It's really funny how some of those games will look even for like the first 5 or 8 minutes, and you're like, oh, hold on, Aristocratic maybe engaged on. He's able to get out with some boots there. But some of those games actually look even, you know, for that first few minutes until the team actually decides to fight, and then they're just like diving your base turret, and all of a sudden the game's over.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like Historic Esports rotations right now. They're doing a great job grouping up. Normally that's something that we see out of these top level teams. These are not names that I've heard of, but they are executing very well.
Crystal buff goes over to Divine Vendetta. A nice afterburn in. They're going to take Churnwalker down first. Now looking for more. Caught up in the choke point, taking a whole load of damage. That'll be 2 kills for Divine Vendetta, plus the buff. A very successful invade.
Just as we give them the accolades, they drop the
Curse them, my man.
Exactly. Churnwalker, unfortunately, if Churnwalker could have stayed alive there and he wasn't the first target to go down, I actually think that fight goes in the favor of Historic Esports. But because Divine Vendetta was able to execute him so quickly, that was essential. And then winning that team fight, they pick up the Ghost Wing on the back of it. And now this is Divine Vendetta's moment to really get aggressive and start to put the pressure on Historic Esports.
An opening to apply some serious pressure here. We'll see if they can capitalize on it. They're back to their own Crystal Treant right now. Historic Esports maybe thought about making something happen, not going to. Down in bottom though, that will be a nice turret take as the Joker and X-Dragon able to couple up on that.
That Ghost Wing buff allowing them to deal that extra damage, dropping it down really quickly. Foskis and Aristocratic putting a little bit of pressure on this mid lane. Definitely back and forth. 3K, 2.5, 3K gold lead, nothing that Historic Esports can't come back from, but because their composition is very early game oriented, things are starting to look a little bit grim for them.
3-2, 8 minutes in. Small, well, small significant. Net worth advantage over to Divine Vendetta. These guys in a great spot right now. We see a little bit of pressure coming out in top, but Flicker doing a nice job to hold this lane here, and we'll see where this rotation will take Mr. Ralphie and Le Pacifisto. Maybe up into their jungle, maybe they continue to just hang out in lane.
Yeah, with these new spawn timers on the map now for all of the jungle camps, Divine Vendetta very aware of the fact that the Crystal Treant for the side of Historic Esports is going to be spawning. They're going to take it immediately and look to get aggressive in the mid lane.
Oh, Mooncloak into the Afterburn. I like that a lot. Malice and Verdict almost takes Churnwalker down behind his own turret. They'll pop that Crucible as they retreat under the safety of that turret there. Le Pacifisto, the healthiest member of Historic Esports here around mid. And what is Seiyun doing? Seiyun really spending a lot of time and resources down in this bottom lane.
Yeah, with how much utility Arden provides to his team, he's one of the heroes that you actually need to have in those team fights, helping keeping your allies alive. He does have the Storm Crown, so he thought about putting some damage on the turret, but Kensei, he's going to go in with that weapon buff.
Yeah, so this doesn't feel too good from my perspective. He doesn't get much damage down on that turret, and honestly, having maybe it's like you stay down there if you don't have Gauntlet, you don't have that team fight utility, but a nice rotation there could have been pretty sweet for Historic Esports.
Absolutely. There's going to be a little bit of just posturing by both teams, looking to get some of their jungle farm continuing to scale up. We see the Ghost Wing timer come back onto the map, so it's going to be something I'm sure that Divine Vendetta is going to look to posture, make sure that they're in position to take it as soon as the opportunity presents itself.
Historic take the top T1 turret there. Le Pacifisto trying to kite back. Looks like he will be taken down unless Mr. Ralphie can body block for him. No, he won't. Samuel gets the kill. I don't think they go under turret for more, but a nice rotation from Divine Vendetta to collapse up into top after that turret falls. I wonder if these guys do hang around, look to just apply pressure. I mean, this is the Adagio Samuel combo, so yeah, they probably hang here, see if Flicker can set anything up. A nice Binding Light root there, but the body block from Ostroma Saru. He goes back deep with a Trespass here. Turret's still gonna fall, and that's gonna be an ult on cooldown.
Yeah, I think he realized that his turret was going to go down. He just wanted to trespass out of there, making sure he's not giving up another kill. However, he's getting a little bit too aggressive in this jungle. He's going to be able to walk away as Divine Vendetta steal away that weapon buff.
Divine Vendetta, do you know this is not your jungle right now? They're going to take Gold Oak as well. There's one hook and chain. I think it was two, but one broke there. A nice first judgment, wind up, but blocked off. Can Historic Esports jump back in? Tony looking to set something up, but his team, where's his allies backup? Sky actually down here. They lost Electro down in the jungle right before. I didn't quite catch that. And that's why Historic Esports weren't at full strength. And Divine Vendetta, clean rotations with 2 down and bottom, 3 up and top, and getting a lot done.
Absolutely. They're going to just turn immediately onto the Ghost Wing off the back of the couple of kills. Take it. They've got the buff now, and that's something that's going to allow them to continue to apply that pressure. Flicker right now with this Pulse Weave and Storm Crown is dealing so much damage. You saw Sky try and just build stacks in the back of that fight, or just put on damage in the back of that fight up in the top side of the jungle, but just unable to do it because Flicker's so tanky.
So tanky. Well, I think to the level of tankiness, I'm looking at the level of damage on X-Dragon right now. This Kensei is fully online, not something I would want to mess around with. A Trespass to reposition, but Churnwalker will go down. Samuel gets the last hit of damage. Mr. Ralphie with the bada boom to try and reposition. It looks like he'll be the second to fall here as Ghost 83 clips him there. And Historic Esports starting to crumble on their own side of the map here, Flash.
Yeah, this is not the kind of history that they want to be writing. But you know, Divine Vendetta, they definitely have the experience. They were in the preseason. They've built some synergy together as teammates, some new guys with X-Dragon and Foskis on that roster. But it's definitely an uphill battle for the side of Historic Esports, but things are starting to look a little bit bleak. Looking bleak indeed, and honestly, they're doing this right now with some actual decent plays coming out. I mean, at least we haven't seen anybody get caught like in a Versa Judgment. Those are being blocked off, right? So mechanically, they're making some of the plays that they need to be making, but just Divine Vendetta have felt one step ahead, and
They have the damage output, they have the catch, they have the tank. They're in a great place, and they're pushing their advantage, I think, most of all.
Absolutely. They've got this Black Claw starting to siege that last turret before they turn onto the armory. Surely it's going to fall. Historic Esports needs to stay together here.
X-Dragon looking to go ham. He's on the back of the gauntlet. He's got one path of Ronin, Sliceu, and Daisu. X-Dragon will force Electro back to the healing platform. Arm raised down. The jump over onto Tony. Tony getting wrecked up. A bada boom trying to split Divine Vendetta apart. Peel, do something, man. Your Vein Crystal is dying. It is all over here in game 1 as Divine Vendetta will wrap this one up just under 14 minutes with quite a clean mid-game here.
Very clean. They had their disadvantage in the early game. They didn't give up too much. They were able to regroup and simply outplay Historic Esports to take the win there.
Taking a win, beautiful thing. A couple beautiful things over at the desk. Tasty bacon and munchables.
A 14-minute victory for Divine Vendetta. Fantastic start to the day for them. Honestly, the start of the game, this looked like it was going to be like a 30-minute slugfest.
Yeah, early on these teams were very even, but I want to focus on like some of the early game rotations that were made, especially at the 4-minute mark. There was one rotation where Historic, they went very aggressive into the Divine Vendetta jungle, and they did this earlier in the game as well. They did it in both of their play-in games. And Divine Vendetta, they scouted it out. They saw that it was coming, and they answered with a great rotation of their own, defended their weapon treant, and then won that trade. They didn't get any kills, but they had so many members of Historic low that they were then able to say, okay, we got our buff, now let's go invade their jungle and follow them into their jungle. And that was when they were able to get a few kills. They stole a buff away from Historic. And from then on, they just they got that small advantage and were just able to hold that the rest of the way.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of this game felt a little bit like it was just a matter of experience, right? Historic played well, but Divine Vendetta just knew exactly what they were doing, read them, and made countermeasures happen. And that's something that you can only do if you've played a lot of competitive games in your history. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we move on towards game 2. But first, let's have a bit of a recap of where we are in the tournament. You can see we are playing in the C block right now. Rising Lotus with their default win. We're in Divine Vendetta versus Historic. But yesterday, we saw our games between Clash and Great Invoxes. Rough Fury got their default win as well. But I want to have a bit of a recap with our Rockstar Rewind of how Clash were able to take their victory.
Yeah, coming into this matchup of Clash versus Invoxes, we knew we had to see Invoxes step up in a big way if they were going to take down Clash. And they did play a little bit better, but this was really just Clash all the way. Just showing their cohesion, showing their ability to dive under turrets and juggle that turret aggro so effectively, and just their team fighting prowess, just absolutely incredible stuff. When things get chaotic and when things get hectic, their shot calling is so crisp and clean.
Yeah, absolutely. Their coordination is clearly there. And when we take a look at the bracket overall, I think Clash have the easiest run. When it comes to other teams in their half of the bracket, they definitely feel like the strongest players. But Shiny Sheep, this is a team that we have yet to see on stream, but when you look at that bracket, it is brutal. Their first opponent, which will be happening next weekend, is going to be Fiery Tail Esports, the all-Russian team led by Waldemar, so pretty experienced squad. If they beat them, they go against Sly, another super experienced squad. Well, most likely, yeah. And then if they manage to beat them as well, it's very likely that they're against Queso. So it is an absolute gauntlet to make it to the final for Shiny Sheep. So difficult bracket for them. We'll see if they're going to be able to make that happen. But let's talk a little bit about sort of the dominance we saw out of Clash yesterday, because this is a team that, you know, we've seen them do fantastic stuff. But in fact, you know what, let's move back to the series that is at hand. Let's talk about Divine Vendetta, because we talked a little bit about Historic, how they weren't able to get on board. Let's talk about the fact that Divine Vendetta did a fantastic job of not allowing anything back. Once they had that lead, they positioned exactly to match Historic and just out-bullied them.
Yeah, and a lot of it was something I talked about a bit yesterday, which was the counter rotations. And that's what Divine Vendetta was able to do here. At the 4-minute mark that I talked about earlier, they counter-rotated that invade into the jungle. There was a couple of times where there were fights around the dragons where they counter-rotated the fact that they saw Historic trying to make a move and they just beat them to the punch, or were able to respond. to what Historic were trying to do and respond in greater numbers or greater positioning. They were able to catch out targets, even though they didn't necessarily rack up the kills. They were able to get some of the members super low, so they're all of a sudden 4v5 because, you know, if a member with 200 health is not going to be able to be involved in a fight.
Yeah, and I think there was a really good example of a similar thing there where they managed to catch out Siyun in the bottom lane. He was on Arden and got caught out, dies. It was his only death in the game, I believe. Maybe he got 2 by the end of it, but he was caught out in the bottom lane, and then they immediately go to Blackclaw. And the mindset there is, even if we don't get Blackclaw, they have to fight us or lose this objective. So force the opponent into a bad fight, and they won the game straight off the back of that. But we are into the draft for game number 2. Historic now on the A side, and they have banned away Kensei to start things off. Divine Vendetta answering with a Samuel ban.
Yeah, again, knowing their opponents. Last game, they took away those 2 carries that we talked about Siyun playing and playing extremely well in the Reza and the Samuel. Siyun ended up playing the Arden, which is much more of a utility-focused hero as opposed to that hard carry, and he did not have the impact that he had in those play-in games whatsoever. So, you know, this is a thing where I would really like to see Siyun back on a carry in this game as opposed to a utility-focused hero, but we'll see where they decide to go with it.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they need that in their back pocket. Churnwalker as well going to be banned away, so Divine Vendetta really throwing out some curveballs here with their bans. Churnwalker obviously was played in the last game, but it didn't really feel like it was, you know, such an impactful hero that it maybe needed banning away. Malene was the other ban, and we'll see what the first pick is going to be here for Historic. It's going to be Reza, which we saw Siyun play, and we saw him play it damn well.
Yeah, we did see him absolutely dominate with the Reza, but it's going to be the Fortress getting answered. Again, one of those heroes that we see a lot of teams push for early and try and pick up into their composition because it's very easy to build a composition around a Fortress. He kind of fits into just about anything. You know, if you want to try and keep a team at bay, the Wolves do a great job of kind of limiting how heavily they want to try and engage. If you want to be a hard engaged team, then you have the movement speed increase that he can provide for the entire team as well. So that's why a lot of teams really like this Fortress early in a draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Flicker going to be once again locked in. Flicker's been pretty high priority in this series, apparently. We're now going to see it on the other side of the board, so we'll see how Historic are going to be able to use that stealth to their advantage. I'm curious what direction they go with the draft here, whether they try and lock in something. All right, they're going to go straight for a carry. So Electro are going to be grabbing that Celeste. They don't have much weapon power on their side right now, but they have a lot of damage when it comes to CP.
Yeah, and there's plenty of options still available for weapon power damage left. I mean, Arden could have been one. Tony is still up.
Can we talk about the fact that Kinetic has made it this entire way through the draft? Like, she is terrifying. I don't really know why nobody is wanting to pick up Kinetic.
That is a very, very good point.
She seems like outright the best. And also, Gwen was picked up when Kinetic was open. Gwen is good. Don't get me wrong, but Kinetic is
it must come down to just comfort on the hero. I mean, if she's banned all the time, you don't get to play her as much, maybe, I guess.
To an extent. So I agree. Hero comfort is important, but when it comes to weapon power carries, I think it's less important, especially if it's auto attack based. Like, yes, your ult is different. Yes, your abilities are slightly different, but the majority of your damage comes from auto attacks. It comes from stutter stepping. So there is a bit of difference, but I think between weapon power carries, you go with the strongest
trying to play
one.
devil's advocate.
No,
I don't know.
I know.
I don't really understand why Kinetic isn't getting picked up here either. It seems like it should be a no-brainer, but it hasn't gotten picked up at all. So Kinetic sneaking on through.
I like that we've got a Baptiste in the game, though. But for you guys that are a bit newer to VPL, let me explain how this tournament is going to be playing out over the next few weeks. We are currently in the round of 16. These teams are fighting to make their way into the quarter final. And by the end of our 5th week, we will have our winner declared in both Europe and in North America. And also, we're playing for a whole bunch of money. That was our PokerGo format, and this is our Dollar Shave Club prize pool. $5,000 on the line for each region.
Yeah, $3,000 is going to go to each team that finishes first in their respective regions. And I mean, that's a good amount of money to be playing for. But it's also about the pride and the honor, the distinction of being the #1 team in your region in all of Vainglory 5v5.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to get on into this game. I'm curious to see how Baptiste is going to do in this one. We don't get to see him very much.
I'm curious to see how he's going to build.
Yeah, because I want to see Crystal Baptiste come back in. Weapon Baptiste has been kind of controlling.
I feel like it's going to be a Weapon Baptiste just because they already have the Celeste and Reza, but
We'll see. We will have to see. It's about time we jump on into this game, though. It's game number 2 between Divine Vendetta and Historic Esports. We'll see if Divine Vendetta can push this to a 2-0. I'm going to pass it to Humanist and FlashX.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are on the rise. My name is Humanist. I'm joined once again by FlashX. We're in game 2 with Historic Esports taking on Divine Vendetta. Divine Vendetta up 1-0 here in this best of 3. And Flash, we got 2 teams starting off with Dragon Blood contracts.
This is actually really interesting. Not just the Dragon Blood contracts, but going back to the draft itself. You had both Anka and Kinetic make it all the way through the draft, neither picked nor banned. So I find that very interesting. This draft this time around felt very targeted. Lots of target bans. The Samuel, the Churnwalker, Maline being taken out, the Kensei being taken out of the picture. And we're going to have a much more passive early game start despite having those Dragon Blood contracts. Both these teams just farming their own jungle, not wanting to get too aggressive that we've been so accustomed to seeing early on here in these European games.
It's pretty interesting to see such a variance in play style from game 1 to 2. Obviously, Divine Vendetta learned a little bit about Historic Esports, learning a little bit about Divine Vendetta, but they had different results. What do you think it speaks to, like, player mentality to see a switch up like that?
I think that's really confident. I mean, you don't really psych yourselves out too much. You saw that these picks and these heroes, there's a lot of respect coming out of Divine Vendetta for Historic Esports. The fact that they decided to use their 2 bans on Samuel and on Churnwalker, not heroes that they want to deal with. But yeah, I mean, hopefully Historic Esports able to kind of keep their composure and hopefully turn things around here in game number 2.
Yeah, dude, I would love for this to go to game 3. We'll see. Historic Esports, I thought their early game looked quite strong. It was where it kind of stalled out in that late early game into the early mid game. On Divine Vendetta able to capitalize on that. As far as openings in this game, do you think this is a game where they could farm for a couple more minutes? Do we see aggression turned up here?
I think that with these backline mages in Celeste for Divine Vendetta and Varia for Historic Esports, or excuse me, flipped around, but I think that both of these teams are going to want to just sit back and scale up, let their mages get stacked a little bit. Seiyun on this Reza in the top lane is going to want to pick up his Aftershock, but I'm very surprised that considering we saw the Fortress and the Flicker start with Dragon Blood contracts, that we haven't seen them be more aggressive.
Yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. And maybe just using it more of just like a local tool as opposed to just trying to make stuff happen across the map. But that does kind of signal to me that at least maybe here in the next few minutes, as they get like a level or 2 more, they might try to make those kind of plays happen. Gwen had some changes here in the last update, right?
Yes, she did. A little bit of in my opinion, a buff. Her Skedaddle giving her just an absolutely massive amount of speed boost now that she's really going to be able to use to maneuver in and out of team fights very effectively. I think that when Flicker tries to go on her, she's going to do very well at getting out of it. Yeah,
that feels really great against the Flicker. And they actually had dropped down here into mid where Aristocratic was in a 3 versus 1 situation, no joke. And he tried to take that Crystal Train. It took a lot of damage, but his teammates will bail him out. Down in bottom lane, Pacifisto jumping in. He had to pop that healing flask because he was in quite a bit of danger. Ghost 83 zoning Foskis. Down there with the jump, Stormforged Spear is going to slap Mr. Ralphie. I don't think they chase him down, but he's definitely going to have to lick his wounds there.
Absolutely. He's Batista. He'll be able to just last hit, get some auto attacks in, heal up very, very quickly. And Arden not going to be one of those heroes that's going to be able to apply too much pressure back onto the side of Historic Esports.
Yeah, definitely not in that 2 versus 1 situation down there. Flash, I was looking at in like the mindset of this Finn. There's a couple of heroes actually I don't like to play Finn against people that can easily escape when you pull them in. Blackfeather is definitely one of them. Lesser so would be the Reza, but definitely that takes like one hero off the map as far as you're looking at engages.
Absolutely. Finn is just going to be there, giving his team as much fortified health as possible. Hopefully doing a lot of body blocking, just standing in front of the Batiste, making sure he's not getting off too many big bad mojos. And I actually think this is going to be a very much an uphill battle for the Batiste, because he's also going to have to play with Fortress on the back of that as well.
Historic Esports with a little bit of aggression here. That's the weapon trait that will be contested. Folskis makes the move over. The Joker marks La Pacifisto. They focus La Pacifisto down. The Vanguard comes into X-Dragon, and Ostermasaru's forced back Divine Vendetta. Very clean rotation. That was actually pretty nice to watch.
Absolutely. Historic Esports had the upper hand at the start of that, but Divine Vendetta rotating very well to support themselves as teammates, making sure they're securing that weapon buff, and now going to look for a counter invade to the side of Historic Esports.
Oh, Seiyun committed his mind, body, and soul flash for that Crystal Treant, and he will pay with his life.
Very much unfortunate. We see the Reza pick up his Aftershock. That's going to be a really nice power spike for him. He's going to need to try and find some of these engages onto the squishier targets like the Gwen, like the Varia, and try and find some picks here in the early game.
Well, speaking of Gwen, X-Dragon's up on top with Joker. They are onto the turret, and this should be a turret take. Yeah, as soon as the wave gets here. Maybe they're in danger, though. Seiyun with that Aftershock could look to make the jump. I don't know if they turn this around. Do they have ult? They have Aces High. They turn around with the Aces High, but Seiyun, he gets one. X-Dragon moves in. Yeah, he gets that one. So it's traded 1 for 1. A little bit predictable in that situation, but Reza committing for the kill.
Not bad. His turret was already gone, so he didn't have too much to lose. Unfortunately, he's just going to miss a couple of last hits, but he needs to try and find those trades without giving up his own life in the process.
Well, he will respawn, make his way back onto the map. Now that that first turret's down, does he continue to apply pressure there, or do you see him moving across the map trying to look for some picks?
I think that now that his wave can push closer to his own turret, he needs to try and rotate and find some of these early game picks. He doesn't want to just become stagnant and sit up there and farm, which a lot of top laners like to do. Because Reza he needs to apply a lot of his early game burst damage as best that he can. Otherwise, he's just going to end up fall off once some of these backline carries pick up what I would imagine would be a slumbering husk to mitigate a lot of that burst damage.
All right, well, we'll see if these things come to fruition. Right now, it's a Ghost Wing contest down in bottom. Mr. Ralphie just demolished right there. Couldn't get onto a target and sustain. He has burst down. Solar Storm comes through. Ghost Wing captured up by Divine Vendetta. Now, let's see if the chase is on. And the chase is on indeed, but they're taking a lot of damage here as they're stacked up on each other. Flicker will be the tail end of this train, taken down first. They jump to Electro with a nice gauntlet. They clean it up. Like Pacifisto, dumpstered. Double kill comes through for the Wolf right there. And Divine Vendetta taking a massive fight.
Divine Vendetta, they started off slow. They found their footing now. This game, only 8 minutes in, is starting to just get blown wide open.
Seiyun dropping the Nether Form detonator over here to secure up the Crystal Treant. Maybe thinking about contesting or looking for an engage here with Mr. Ralphie. They've got the Fortress. Feels like they got a kill here. Seiyun doesn't have that ult, though. If he had that ult in that moment, that would have been a kill. I don't know. Hindsight's 20/20. Whatever the case, though, they'll probably move up to River. I don't see them chasing.
Aristocratic actually popped his Crucible to get Joker out of that Ordained, but he chose to just stay in it anyways. He did not need to take that much damage. A little bit of miscommunication for the side of Divine Vendetta that they can look to clean up as they start to go against some of these better teams, but Historic Esports looking to apply some pressure on this top tier 1 turret.
Yeah, they have a small positioning advantage right now, but Varia's rotating up as well. A nice catch there with that stun, but Seiyun's on to Gwen. Seiyun turned around as Fortress is able to get that kill. It's 1 for 1. Turrets dropped as well. Flash. Let's see, Batiste in the thick of things, plus Celeste just wrecked. All of a sudden, Divine Vendetta pressed the you all just die button.
Foskis has been really good in both of these games. He's sitting at 4-0-4 right now. Not someone that I've seen too much of in competitive Vainglory, but he is certainly doing what he can to make a name for himself.
Dude, that was really clean. And this Divine Vendetta squad, Like, sure, their first couple minutes of both games was not like super impressive, but they were doing their job. And when they choose to turn it up and make a play, they just make it happen. Mr. Ralphie, good night, sweet prince.
Not where you want to be. You probably can't predict that the entirety of the enemy team is going to be waiting in the brush right there. But yeah, Historic Esports needs to try to regain some of this map control, get some vision right now, because currently they do not have a lot of scout cams sitting on the map.
Le Pacifisto is going to be in a 3 versus 1 situation. Rose offensive. 534 damage on the Stormforged Spear. He'll go down. Up towards the top Crystal Tree. We have an engage as well. Turned around with the Heliogenesis to get the double kill. Electro, Ostermasaru, and Seiyun able to thwart the aggressive maneuver into their jungle.
Yeah, Aristocratic and X-Dragon feel a little bit overly confident there. A 2v4 is not the kind of engagement that you want to take when you're ahead. That is the kind of play that throws are made of. And now Ghost here in this bottom lane also being engaged upon.
Being engaged upon, but it doesn't feel too threatening right now. I mean, Mr. Ralphie, I'm looking at his items, Le Pacifisto. These guys don't have anything really complete here.
Yeah, they don't have too much damage, and then Arden additionally is so tanky that it's hard to do a bunch of damage, but with that Storm Crown, they are going to look to just absolutely melt this Ghost Wing down.
Ghost Wing melting down as Flash describes, and Ghost Wing taken up here. So 13-4, 11.5 minutes in, 10k net worth advantage, Divine Vendetta looking good. I'm sure they're feeling good.
Absolutely. Varia sitting on the double buff, finding Reza. He's going to be able to just dash away, but Divine Vendetta, they're out for blood.
Okay, Flicker trying to tank up a little bit of this damage that's firing out here. Pretty devastating amounts of damage. Stormforged Spear, 850 damage. The pull will not connect. That would have been a dead Celeste, and now it's probably a pucker up moment.
Absolutely. 850 damage coming out of that Stormforged Spear. If you can land some of those in the middle of a team fight, Celeste is going to be completely negated in terms of her effectiveness.
It's devastating, dude. Oh my goodness. That is like, when you're doing that kind of damage, it feels great. When you're taking that kind of damage, that is a real feels bad, man. Le Pacifisto. Looks like he'll be able to escape with the help of Mr. Ralphie here. They probably let this turret go. Do you think they mounted defense?
If you're on Historic Esports right now, you need to be looking and creating your own opportunities. I think that if you see Divine Vendetta, try to look for a push bottom lane. Maybe even try to go for a Black Claw capture, push out the mid and the top lanes, and just try and look for a little bit of a trade there. But right now, there are not a lot of options if you are Historic Esports.
The Black Feather over here has completed his breaking point, so I don't know. I know it's saying a lot, but maybe if he can survive through, get a couple breaking point stacks, they can actually start to apply some more damage here. But with not much defense, it feels like he's just gonna get blown up. And Historic Esports trying to come over to contest this Black Claw, but they're gonna have to really tighten things up if they're gonna try to contest it all. In fact, it looks like they've made the call to just shove lanes.
Yeah, just give it up. Maybe Celeste looks for Solar Storm to try and steal. Not today, though. They're going to need to defend this. This is going to be a really big push coming out of the Divine Vendetta. Both Varia and Gwen, their damage-dealing backline carries have the buffs. That's something that Historic Esports is going to be really careful of. Divine Vendetta, Blacklaw not even at that first turret or barely getting there, just demolishing that tier 2 turret.
There is a tier 2 there? My goodness. Could barely even, I think I blinked right there. Seiyun over the wall. A nice efficient Netherform detonator. He'll reposition backwards, but they've lost Mr. Ralphie. He can't stay on the front side. He can't stand forward and apply damage. He melts down. Blacklaw stays on the turret while Divine Vendetta jump forward. Little Stormforged Spear love there from Boskis. They're up 15-4. They're into the base. Divine Vendetta, let's see how they want to play this out. Anvil's Hammer will drop here. Historic Esports in fighting shape. They have a respawn on Mr. Ralphie in a couple seconds. They can't afford to lose. Seiyun, he's down. X-Dragon won't fall. And it looks like Divine Vendetta will be cleaning up game 2 here quite shortly. Indeed, it's just a matter of time. Game 1 and 2, incredibly clean. Divine Vendetta looking super strong.
GG, well played, Divine Vendetta. I'm not sure if it was more misplay on the side of Historic Esports, but as of right now, I think Divine Vendetta has the cleanest Blacklaw pushes we have seen out of any team.
Max efficiency in the rhythm, looking good, man. And with that, Flash, great cast for this series. We'll go ahead and send it back over to the analyst desk.
What a game coming out from Divine Vendetta. 2-0 in the end. A dominant victory from them. I have to say, I'm a little bit heartbroken for Historic. We were talking about it during the game. It feels like, had the bracket been different, maybe Historic would have been our quarterfinals teams moving forward, because they actually played very well.
Yeah, there were definitely signs of, that cohesion that we talked about needing to be a top team. And there were signs of life from them, but they just weren't quite up to par. I mean, I was watching and we were saying they're making all the right decisions. They just aren't quite as good as Divine Vendetta were when it came down to the actual team fighting.
And Divine Vendetta, I don't want to take anything away from them. They played this incredibly intelligently. And also, just their team fighting prowess is incredibly strong. They know exactly how to work as a unit. They know exactly what their win condition is for their composition as well. I think that was one of the big things was when we were in those team fights, you could see that Divine Vendetta knew exactly what they needed to achieve. Let's take a look at our bracket, though. You can see Divine Vendetta now moving forward into our quarterfinals. They'll be up against Rising Lotus. That is going to be a very exciting matchup, honestly.
On paper, that looks like a very even matchup for these two teams going head-to-head.
I am excited to see what happens in our C block, but that is half of our bracket decided now. 2 of our quarterfinals are locked in. Clash and Ra Fury, and then Rising Lotus and Divine Vendetta. And you can see we have 4 more round of 16 games to go for Europe. Before we get on into that, though, let's have a quick word from Razor. So already halfway through our round of 16 here in Europe, but we're going to be jumping into our North American games next. So let's take a look at what is still to come for you guys at home, as we have 2 more best of 3s that are going to be coming on stream later on today. You can see the victories up on the top half of the bracket, but we have here our North American game. Starting at 12, we'll have Hammers Esports against Lemon Squeezy, and then later on after that one, we'll have Team Ferox up against Minigunners.
Yeah, and obviously everyone knows Hammers, but on the other side of, or the other matchup, Ferox versus Minigunners, not quite as many recognizable names in terms of teams, but again, players that you may well know when we get to it. And that Ferox versus Minigunners match is actually it's a pretty intriguing one because of some of that.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting matchup, and we'll talk more about that later on in the day. That's going to be the C block. Similarly to Europe, we're going through the left of the bracket first, and then next weekend we'll be jumping on into the games on the right-hand side of the bracket. Very excited to see how these North American games are going to pan out, because it definitely feels like today we've been getting into the games that are a little bit higher caliber. Some of the lower tier teams have been sort of filtered out of the tournament. Now we're getting into the big ticket matches, and we're starting to see this be a matter of how much preparation have you done? What's your game plan coming in, and how well are you going to be able to draft?
Yeah, and how well do you understand the 5v5 meta that's coming on? And, again, looking at the matchups that we have, Hammers Esports going to be going up against Lemon Squeezy. Hammers Esports, this is a team that's looking for a bit of redemption after their preseason. Did not look good in the preseason. There's no real way to sugarcoat it. They did not look good in the preseason.
They definitely struggled in the preseason. There has been a couple of changes coming on into the regular season, though. We'll see if it's going to be a new slate for Hammers. That's going to be happening later on today. We'll be back with the Hammers versus Lemon Squeezy game in about 2 hours' time. Make sure you join us for that. But for EU, we're going to be saying goodbye, and we'll see you in just a couple of hours.